Hi, everyone, and welcome to EduTALK. This is the time that you put aside to listen and share in educational topics. This is EduTALK. It's a weekly virtual talk show created out of the need for a global learning community. EduTALK features teachers, principals, administrators, business leaders, and dignitaries who share their expertise on critical topics facing education today. EduTalk is hosted and co-hosted by myself, Dr. Dwayne Dice. I'm the CEO and founder of Education Solutions International. And Dr. Miguel Barker, who is a seasoned educator, and he is based in London, England. Right now, Dr. Barker is about to start his day, and we are almost ready to go to bed. After we finished this wonderful, wonderful episode, Dr. Barker, shout out to you and all educators over there in England.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on the show. As usual, it's always good fun to discuss topics.
Well, Dr. Barker, speaking of topics, before we go over to Mrs. Villeneuve-Dyce there, you started your podcast, your book, your story. How is it going?
It's happening. It's good. I think I'd say I'm very close to completing season 1 of the podcast. The vision of the podcast is really to create a platform for people who have written books and to use their writing story to provide an inspirational story for people who want to write, have begun to write, but have never completed, those projects. So what I'm hoping to do is that when people listen to people who have gone and jumped over those hurdles, they would then get that motivation to go and write. So we're hearing people's personal stories. We're also hearing their publishing and production story, but also the other part of it is that I'm also using it to collect, a kind of like a set of research as well. See what are the key things that you need to do if you want to get the book published, so that I can use that to motivate me to get my book done. So it's about 3 for 1. So it's going all right. Getting into the podcast production stuff, and I think I got a message yesterday to say that I've gotten 100 downloads now of the podcast. So it's going
impressive.
So
that's very good.
Yeah.
I am very impressed.
It's keeping going. It's keeping going is the key. So I'll try to keep going.
It's kind of like remind us of our guest here. Judy is no stranger to EduTalk. She's the CFO for Education Solutions International, ESI. Judy and Dr. Barker, ESI is a household name now. The acronym ESI, or Education Solutions. It's going across the globe. Judy, how is life?
Life is very good, and it is a pleasure, of course, to be on with you and Dr. Barker. Thank you. I'm looking forward to a very exciting and engaging conversation, as we usually do.
Yeah, it's a critical time. Go ahead, Dr. Barker.
No, nothing. I'm just glad to have Judy on as well. Always great to exchange ideas.
This is, to let people know, this is the leadership of ESI, Education Solutions International, because Dr. Barker, I should have announced that, keep on forgetting every time to announce that you are the Chief Academic Officer of ESI, and Judy is the CFO of Education Solutions. I'm very happy because of the progress we're making so far. Right across the globe, because we have featured quite a bit of people from Africa and Asia and America, of course, and England, and here in America, and of course in Jamaica as well. We care about our people, but ESI is for everyone. It's education. And speaking of everyone and its education, we actually are gonna tackle, we won't do so much justice to the topic of race this evening or this morning, wherever you are on this planet. But we want to talk about it. We love talking about critical topics and see if we can unfold a little bit more of it. It's kind of like what Dr. Barker would mention each time, peeling away the onion, you know, a layer at a time. So we're going to peel away one more section of this onion called race or racial history. Should race be a topic? And when you look at, I'm trying to set up the platform here. When you look at race and our history, we have seen economic discussions and discourses, economic discourses around within history. We have seen the movement of people, and we have heard a lot about different social constructs, but we have never tackled in school or anywhere except for maybe in our bars or pubs, or when we meet on the roadside or we meet in somebody's backyard. We talk about race, but we have never seen it substantially in books in our schools. Mm-hmm. And we're wondering, should it be a topic, race, because it plays a major part in the education and educating of young people across the globe. And let me give you, I'm not going to take over the platform too much. I want to set it up. Let me give you a story and then I'll pass it on to you, Dr. Barker and Judy. With the first time I heard or seen people collecting like who is African American or Black, it's really Black on the paper and white, Black and white, was when I started working in Florida. I didn't see it in Jamaica. We don't have that in Jamaica. And I moved from Jamaica and then I went straight to Florida and I started working. And they told us within the 20-day count of school, you need to count how many Black kids and how many white kids. And I was wondering, like, what is going on here? Like, what do you mean by that? That's so, it's degrading. And someone let me know that this is what it is. You're not in the Caribbean anymore. You need to count the kids, find out whoever on paper who is Black and who is white, and so on. And when it comes to race, like the history, we don't see anything like that in the social studies book. All we saw the Constitution, we saw economic benefits and so on, and the railroads, who built the railroads and so on, all the way down to who built New York City and Chicago and California and so on. And nobody talk about race and the divides and the redlining and so on based on race. All of these things are based. Even the economic benefits are so on. The economy is, if you boil down to the oil of it, is race. So we set this up, and so to ask the question, should race be a topic in our history curriculum? I'm gonna pass it on. Dr. Barker.
I suppose it's important we start off with what is race. When we start, should race be a topic and in the curriculum, and what curriculum as well? There are two pieces there that needs some amount of agreement in this conversation before we can begin to do that. I say that only because there seems to be the emergence of a new race, which is the brown race. And it is now reaching popular discourse to use the term Black and brown to define as against white in conversations. It's more normal now to see this than anything else. So it means that race has a meaning that we first need to clarify, because for there to be a Black, a brown, and a white race, especially in America, where this is a prevalent part of the discussion, Black and brown boys and Black and brown. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that would be helpful to decide what do we mean when we talk about race, and whether Black and brown and white represents those boundaries as we define people. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're living in America. So when you think of brown and Black, am I speaking, I'm making something up? Is it something you're familiar with? And whether that represents clear distinctions between races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I would like to go back even a little further. I mean, the idea of race is something that has been contrived, right? It's not based on scientific fact. In fact, there's only one human race. But what we have come to find out is that they're given power through these identifications and these groupings. Here in the United States, brown typically is synonymous with Hispanic. It doesn't include Asians. It doesn't include Indians. It doesn't include any of the other variations of human being that they are. They are really limiting it to people of Hispanic heritage. And what we have seen is Asians still at least are associated with their continent, right? They're Asians. They're not the yellows. We have just Black, brown, white, and then everybody else gets to keep their ethnic identity. So this illusion is part of a dialogue that they have expanded as part of the othering of the people that they don't want or that they reject in their society. And as you know, something very exciting happened here where we had several people from various Latin countries coming here, and then we had different governors in southern states busing them all over the United States, especially in blue states, our more progressive states. And we received over 5,000 students here in New York City's public schools. Our mayor, Eric Adams, has established a variety of resources, housing schemes, different integrative processes in order to bring in those families to demonstrate that we will not reject our brown brethren, as he would say, who have now been brought to New York City. So race is very politicized here, and it is definitely only associated with a shade when they're creating the division between whites and Blacks and Browns. That's how we're seeing them. It's being represented in the information. It's being represented in the news. Even Latinos are calling themselves brown people now, you know? So it's interesting how you adopt the label and what that label means for you, because if you look at the academic data, you also know that it's the brown and Black students that are performing the worst everywhere. In all of the standardized examinations, they're having the most difficult time academically here in New York. And what I understand, that's also the case in places like DC. Is that correct, Dr. Dyce? And, and in Florida as well?
So yeah, okay, good. So Dr. Barker, thank you, and Judy is setting this up to look at. It's either whether we count the people in general as one type or the other, and then find services or lack thereof in terms of equity for people. So because of the classification over the years, then some people are being marginalized. And it's based on the construct that they create for them based on the color of their skin. So with that regard, should students know, should we get them to understand where they're from? Because I even have this conversation with my daughter just yesterday, actually. And I asked her in terms of Black history, I said, where do you think Black history started? And you know where she went to? Slavery. My daughter went straight to slavery. And I said, what happened before slavery? And she said, I don't know. I don't know. So I said, did you know that Black people were powerful people before slavery, before the 1600s? And she said, really? So we had a long conversation and started talking about the Moors and even the first skulls that they found in the Americas, which were Black people who they found came across the Atlantic long time ago. And so we have this dialogue. Should we know of, and I'm just using Black and the skull and so on for Africa. So should we get students to know that history doesn't start with Black history, or history for white people doesn't start in America or Great Britain, but in Europe in general, or that, you know, these evolution of people and transportation and migration of people from which continent in the next, should that become a part of history curriculum? where they learn about the races, how they classify them, where it came from, so that people can start owning their skin, and others who are going to treat them like the others might understand and recognize that these people belong. You know, what do you think?
I mean, in utopia, the, the the purpose of schooling is not to achieve those goals. You see, if that was the goal, if the purpose of schooling was to achieve, and I use the term schooling as against education, the purpose of schooling is not to unite in the way that you're describing. And it is not, I when I say that, I mean, we're not talking about national schooling, and every country has goals that they have, strategic goals for the people that they have in their schools, right? They do. And this is coming all the way back from the industrial revolution. You know, the idea of schooling came out of that to provide an opportunity for people to go to work. So that at least kids would not be, you know, and prepare people to work. And school has always been a part of the national agenda. You know, what purpose does it serve? No, unity is not an outcome that many countries seek, especially when you have diversity in it, simply because you cannot provide for all. So you have to create hegemonies within those, you know, hierarchies. People need to feel that some are better than others. It's not explicit. It's not explicit. It's just the way that it works. So when you speak about, for example, a history curriculum that would empower and embolden people of color to feel like they are not part of the other, but they are part of the country itself. That's a decision that anyone can take at any time. Even a teacher today could decide to bring resources into their classroom without making it about race. That would just enlighten. Everything that happened in the world doesn't happen in a linear way. While even slavery was happening in Africa, in the UK, Africa had empires going on at the same time. There were cities going on. It wasn't a case where while slavery was happening, Africa stopped. Yeah, things were happening in parts of Africa that we don't even read about because they are not affected by colonization in the way that others were. There are things happening in China and Japan at the same time, and things are happening in Australia at the same time, or in Russia for that matter. But we just don't learn history in that way. We learn history in a way that someone tells the story so that we can see history like your daughter would see it as the emergence of the Black man is slavery. But it is settled in history that the first civilizations and the first evidence of any civilization happened in Africa. It is settled. It's not a debate. These books exist long before Google. It's available. If you went to university to study history, you'll come across these books and you'll be like, what? I mean, I, for one, when I studied history, I never used to go to classes in school. And so when I needed to study history, I did history when I was at Teachers College on my own. But I wasn't able to afford the textbooks. So I couldn't read like Caribbean Storybook 1 and all these books that were published for schools. So what I did to get my history was go to the library and just read other books. So I was reading for my history course, Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams, right? I was reading They Came Before Columbus, Ivan Van Sertima. These were the books I'm reading as just a book about history, not a book that was written for the curriculum. There's a difference, right? And I was able to understand what was happening at the time in Jamaica when we were reading those books, that linear story, that what was happening around Jamaica, what was happening in England that caused slavery to end. It wasn't the goodness of people's hearts, it was other things. So we need to, what we need, the thing is, the first thing we can't rely on is the government of the country that has a different goal to determine those things, because their goals are different from ours. That's essentially is my point.
Judy?
Yes, I have to agree with Dr. Barker. I mean, the fact is that education was created for the purpose of being able to control the population. That's why different people receive different types of education. That was the benefit of keeping schools segregated initially, right, here in the United States. I don't know how that manifested in other countries, but the fact is that it was a continual practice that African Americans, at least here in the United States, were taught to do more manual labor type things. And the educators that were the people who did get educated up north and all of those things and brought it back were actually doing a better job teaching Black students in the United States during those times when they were receiving their own education by their own people than after integration. Integration is where there's a lot of research around the fact that education really plummeted for African American people because, of course, the expectation of being taught by a white teacher is much lower for that student and that student's ability to accomplish, and all of the not just subliminal, but explicit as well as implicit inferiority communication of what is being taught to that child that they're ingesting and they're integrating into their own understanding of their identity. It has always been from a white supremacist position. They've never included where we could feel empowered. They were training us to be subservient to them and to know our place, right? And even the way that they were using education through religion was for the purpose of understanding that we were supposed to be a subordinate class. So the question that you're asking is whether or not we should have those types of instruction in school. Absolutely, we should, ideally, as Dr. Barker has mentioned, and we can only do that in the schools that we ourselves control, because that's not what the state curriculum in countries where whites are the majority. It's not going to be a place where they think that they can get a benefit, right? They won't want to support that level of empowerment that we receive through an education that shows that we are as equal and capable and have not only equal and capable today, but have accomplished a great deal before they ever did, right? My experience with Black history also, like Dr. Barker, didn't come through school. That doesn't seem to be the source of this kinds of information. It just happens that, my great-grandaunt was also working at the NAACP and and she's married to a civil rights leader. And, there's just a lot of information in our family to explain to us who we are. But that happens to be, again, resources that we accumulated ourselves. It would be really, really great to find an avenue to start to engage these conversations. And I don't want to limit it just to Black history. I like the idea of engaging in human history and actually seeing the interaction that everybody has been having with each other simultaneously, just juxtaposed to one another, that really shows how we were all moving and what the changes were and why. I do take a lot of pride out of what you said about the Moors and the fact that, they did rule in Europe, in Spain and Portugal for 700 years. That's not the kind of thing that's common knowledge. And the fact is that in places like Spain, they've tried to rewrite their history so that isn't evidence, that's something that they want to forget about. So just like, people of Jewish descent, they keep their history very fresh. They're constantly trying to share it out. They have their individual instruction that their children attend. What I've come to find, if we're going to learn anything, we really do need a place where we are educating our own. We cannot depend on an educational system to do that for us.
Mm-hmm. I just feel like the idea of history should start in the home, where families started talking, share the stories. Dr. Barker mentioned the stories where they start. We do need to start there, because the frustration comes with trying to battle with the established system and trying to put ideas in the system that is already established for a cause already, and achieving its objective. Yeah.
What I was going to say, though, is the change that we need is it's not a knowledge change. I think my parents in particular would have struggled to know what they don't know. They just would not have been aware that there is anything else to teach me. You know what I mean? And there are many homes where people are living in bliss. They have no idea what the other information is because they're not exposed to it, and the systems that they have engaged with do not point them in that direction. You know, when you do history in school, and we did Caribbean Storybook 1 and Caribbean Storybook 2, and the people who came and the making of the West Indies, these are written from English perspectives of what history is. It's maybe someone based in Jamaica, could even be someone at the University of the West Indies, but their perspective on history is still what they have chosen to write about. So the exposure that my family had, they would be around those texts. There wouldn't be other readings that people could take that they could then say, you know what, I'll do the other readings. So my issue is, in home, what we need to be talking about is the political power. You see, we need to educate our people about the importance of having political clout, because it is in the politics that change can happen. And apart from that, it's revolution, right? It is in the politics. If we don't have political power, you cannot determine policy. You cannot determine and open those conversations. You can't keep it on the agenda. You can't ask for the reports. You can't do anything. You are a decision taker. And the nature of the education that we have received across most countries, including even poor Caucasians, is to keep people to find a dissatisfaction in politics. And so what happens is the people who benefit are the people who benefit. They can put policies in place that put races against each other. They can put policies in place that keep certain information off the table. So yes, I agree with you that we have to have the conversation in the home. But it's not, yes, the Black history and the history and all that, but the reality of it is political understanding politics and the role it plays is something that we need to teach our kids, and we need to engage them every day in watching the news and then dissecting the news and understanding what a decision is and what it means, and have those conversations. Because for the most part, you talk to many people, them say, I'm in a business with politics. I'm not interested in politics.
True.
Because I've never gotten anything from politics. But if you haven't gotten anything from politics, that's the reason why you need to engage with politics.
I usually tell people don't run away from politics, because if you run away from it, you are going to take away your influence or your vote, and you're going to give it to somebody who might make some decision that you don't like. And some of these boil down to right in the classroom.
Of course they do.
Yeah. Judy, what with all this turmoil that is happening in America, and it's not just America, we see critical race theory. Some people say that by not talking about it, you actually are talking about it. So the idea of them beating down critical, and when I say them, I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but other people beating down on critical race theory based on, ideas, and some of them are their valid ideas, to talk against it or to pass policies against it. You're actually talking about it, in other words, and you're actually putting fuel to that fire of it if you don't talk about it. Should this whole idea of education, the rewriting and so on, should it the turmoil that is happening now, is that relevant to pick up the pieces of what do you want to call it now, racial influence, or the influence of race on policies, so that people can start having a discourse in academic arenas, not just at the graduate level, but even starting in probably lower high school age?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting. The question is very interesting because it really does connect to the idea of power that Dr. Barker was mentioning. The manipulation of the idea of race at the center of at least American history has been wielded in that way in order to wield the power in one direction and away from the other. I mean, that's really what the basic purpose of creating the idea of a division of races is who has power, who doesn't, who has resources, who doesn't, who has opportunities, who doesn't. How do we achieve that? Well, critical race theory is really the evaluation of how institutions, you know, in the United States for sure, but I'm sure it exists in other places, how does it manipulate power in an institutionalized way in order to maintain that divide? And you had mentioned very briefly before, Dr. Dyce, that, you know, there was the whole redlining. This is a very particular way in which real estate was divided between the races here in the United States to ensure that in redlined areas where Blacks were directed to live, never increased in property value, were not maintained, a lot of resources and opportunities that were directed away from there, so they didn't have the opportunities, or even they would even divide them by highways, preventing them to get from where they live to employment opportunities. I mean, the amount of strategic effort that was made in order to keep these people down, like literally, is remarkable, and it's reproduced in a number of institutions. So the irony here in the United States right now is that we have a legislation eruption across the country in both politically blue and politically red states. And for those who are watching that aren't familiar with that, our red states being Republican, our blue states being Democratic, where we have been using this term critical race theory as an idea of something that should not be taught in our schools. And the thing is it's never been taught in K-12 schools. It is a legal concept that usually is taught in legal education, law schools, where they're analyzing how the critical race theory is implementing itself through these institutionalized efforts. But it's being used as a means through which to deny K-12 educators to incorporate any topics about race, about gender, about sexual identity. But what's very interesting about the race piece, and it's almost like it's a copy and paste in all of the different legislation at the state level, mind you, because Biden did change the one at the federal level when he had taken office. But what they say is, you can't teach anything that'll make children that are not children of color, particularly, that's going to make them feel bad about themselves. That's going to associate the education that they're receiving to a history that they had no participation in. So in other words, they don't want the guilt being taught in school about the role that white people played in the oppression of Black people in the United States. And they haven't been very specific about it in the legislation. So what you have here is now public schools going bending backwards to try to find ways in order to teach education about American history without talking about race. It is impossible, considering the history of the country is based on race. It wouldn't even have existed without that dichotomy. In fact, historically, we can even confirm that their independence from England couldn't even have been achieved had they not had money from their slave economy. So it's an expectation that is impossible to meet, that of not being able to teach anything about race in history in the United States under the confinement of this legislation, which threatens to penalize teachers by taking their state licenses if they are found to violate the legislation. So while we do need this instruction in our schools more than ever, and by, I think it's 2040, the majority of people in the United States are predicted to be people that are brown and Black.
Mhm.
And so that being a threat to the existing power structure, the white supremacist power structure, these are the efforts that are being made through, yes, politics, the political system, through legislation, in order to limit this kind of information being taught in schools. So we have to find a way outside of publicly funded educational systems in order to get this information to our students, because there are efforts being made to deny them the education they need in order to be the best citizens and to have a future for themselves and to navigate the power structure in order to be able to be successful adults.
Yeah. I was thinking that if you put race in, you know, everything and you talk about it, all the different, or look at this, even take it out, take out race and start teaching, you know, equity and belonging and so on in everything, and just be like that. It would be, as Dr. Barker mentioned, utopia earlier on, and I'm gonna leave it as that. It's just a struggle that I'm having with all the idea, because I'm into equity and belonging and diversity, and we're leading the discourse, you know, in our own way, our work, and I'm thinking there's a lot of chattering about it, and the more you create equity, is the more you're seeing divisions. The more you fight against it, the more you push it, the more you put in belonging and so on, it's the more. And we talk about race a lot because it's a lot of things that boil down to the whole construct that the country is built upon, this idea of race. And I call it an idea. Dr. Barker, we're closing off in a little bit, but just a few hours ago, you got a new prime minister. He's like musical chairs over there in England right now. With I'm trying to look up the name, is Rishi Sunak. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes. New prime minister.
Yeah, and it's speaking of race, is the first person of color to be prime minister of England.
And he's a Hindu as well. So
And
there's also a religious aspect as well.
Oh my
Practicing
goodness.
Hindu. So,
Yeah.
and maybe second generation. I think he's second generation. His parents came here as you know, got naturalized and set up businesses, and
Interesting.
yeah, I think he married a very rich woman who had her father born into a rich family as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he decided the middle class. I think his parents, one of them was a doctor, mother owned a pharmacy, you know, middle class kind of setup for her.
Oh, okay.
But they are not Indians from India, they are Indians from Africa. I suppose the trace goes all the way back, but they actually came from, I think, Kenya or Uganda. I can double check and set up. So there's a lot there. And he married a lady whose father is a billionaire. So he has come into money as well, you know. There's a lot there. I mean, one of the things I try to avoid is getting into discussions about parsing representation. Representation matters. People sometimes it's not the right person in the position, but I also know that for many people and for people who have ambition, it's important that other people are in certain roles so people can see them and use them as it doesn't mean that, because no one's perfect, you know. No one's perfect. But we have seen that there are many people not of color who are not perfect, but have sycophantic support, because people know what it means to have those people in those positions. Now it comes back to the political piece, right? It matters. So I am not, let's say, a fan of Rishi, but I'm a fan of someone like him getting into those roles, because it sends a message. And I don't care if he's good or bad, or even for me or against me. It has nothing to do with that, because the other people weren't either. And I don't want to place any burden on him as well, like for him to make the changes in what I want him to do as much as possible. is make a pathway. So other people, when other people of color say, I want to be in a role, people can say, you could as well. Yeah. Because what you don't want is for him to be a bad person, because people, we get our tired with the same brush, see them have no use whatsoever, and therefore. So I'm leaving that to the people. I've stayed away from politics as much as I can. Just don't have the time to be involved, and that sounds a little bit hypocritical. I am politically informed. I just have not gotten into political representation, which is a whole different thing. I just haven't, because time, need to make the time, I suppose. But it is interesting. It's good to see what's happening. Again, there is an attack on him already, but I've just given you a piece of his story because people describe him as a rich person. And I know that you, me, could become rich because of decisions we take in life. It doesn't mean that's who we are. But he's coming from a middle class background, His parents wanted the best for him. They didn't come, they're not moneyed people. This is a fact, not a debate. He found his wife in Stanford studying his MBA, and they got married, and turned out, or he knew before, I don't know, but she's certainly a very rich woman. And he's married into that family, and he benefits from that. Maybe he's a good husband, I don't know. But the fact is, he's a person who is what it is. So
it's what it is.
There's a story there, but Britain has gotten their first person of color. What is interesting as well in England is that the party that he's in is considered to be, is like the Republican Party in that sense in the UK, in the sense of it's more the party for the Tories, seen as more the party for the rich, right? And many of the policies you'll find to be similar, the idea of trickle-down economics and blah, right? Local rather against federal, that kind of thing. So, but that party, strangely enough, is the only party that has produced 3 women prime minister and 1 person of color. The other party that everybody is seeing is for the people of color and all that, has no one anywhere even near leadership.
It's very ironic.
And it draws me to a picture you posted once, Dr. Dyce, where the axe and the wood.
Axe,
you know that one?
Yes.
When I say the axe, the trees are looking at the axe and saying it is made out of wood. When in reality the wood is, the axe is still chopping down the trees. So sometimes we it's just the reality.
It is. Thank you. We will close off. We'll close off with that. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you for coming on and being with us and sharing the topic. At least we get to dissect a little bit of it. Race in terms of should it be a topic in our history curriculum? And we still have a long way to go. We're going to talk about this again and again. Dr. Barker, thank you again for sharing this space with me and here for another week. And I wish you all the best with your book, your story.
It's going on. And Dr. Dyce, you need to know, let your listeners know that you have been one of the persons interviewed about your book,
Yeah, I actually break the glass ceiling there for that one.
No. So you're there as well. So anyone who is interested in listening and so on, come along. Some good conversations. I'm still trying to find young authors or new authors, people with a story to share. Come along. Let's talk about it. It's a nice feel-good conversation. Judy, check it out. Listen up.
Yeah, she did. She listened to a few of them, and
very nice.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast. I think it's really awesome, and the people who are on there, they're very motivated, to share their whole ideas.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good chats, and as I said, we're learning all the time. Good stuff.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you everybody for listening. I wish you all the best. Have a great week. October is coming to a close, and we didn't feature what do you call it? Breast cancer month in October, but we do need your consideration to think of people who are suffering from cancer and see in your own little way how you can support them. You know, if it's even to sit with them and talk to them for a little bit, because you're not a surgeon or a medical doctor or a chemist that is making medicine for anybody. I wish you all the best, everybody. Remember to be good. If you cannot be nice, be good. If you're going to say something horrible, keep your mouth shut. Do not say anything, okay? Be good. Spread some light out there. All right, take care. This is EduTalk. All the best. Dr. Barker and myself will see you all next week. And Judy, thank you so much for being on.
Nice to see you again, Judy.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.